Greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Alongside Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, I'm Steve Deace. Hope you guys had a great weekend. I promise you, it was not as good as mine. With the absolute cutest granddaughter on planet Earth, and I'll fight you for that. Surrounded by the beautiful tulips of America, America's maybe greatest exurb, God's country in Pella, Iowa, where we're the moderates. That was a good weekend. How was you guys' weekend? Good?
Excellent. Some Cedar Rapids time with in-laws. So also had some family time. Yeah, excellent.
That's good. What about the McIntyres? Catch up on your sleep yet, Aaron?
Yeah, for the most part, I think. Had a lot of yard work to do. Inhaled some mold or fungus spores. That's very nice. And a pile of grass that I was picking up. You know, good stuff.
This guy. I just love him.
Keeping it real.
He does, man. There's always at least a little, there's always a pinch of Vanta, no matter what else is happening in the world. And I respect that. It keeps the rest of us grounded around here.
Agreed.
All right. Hey, we are brought to you by our friends over at Preborn. You know, as Mother's Day approaches, you can help give a woman considering the murder of her child the greatest gift possible, the gift of being a mom. Because your tax-deductible donation for as little as $28 that will fund an ultrasound gives her double the odds that she will not commit the heinous sin of murder and end up just wrestling with that maybe for the rest of her life. And instead, you'll not only maybe save her soul, but you'll save her baby in the process. And you guys have been so generous through this partnership the last few years with Preborn. Last year, Preborn estimates that they were able to save up to 70,000 babies last year alone. And our partnership with them here at The Blaze was a big part of that. So please keep that generosity going. And it's not just ultrasounds. It's not like, hey, thanks for choosing life. You know, here's a sticker and good luck to you. We'll see you on the flip side. I mean, they are there helping, discipling, assisting, shepherding those moms and their babies, sometimes for up to 2 years after the baby's born. So if you want to be a part of this, make a tax-deductible donation today by dialing pound 250 and say the keyword baby on your mobile phone. That's pound 250 with the keyword baby on your mobile phone, or go to preborn.com/Steve. That's preborn.com/Steve. All right, coming up on today's show, next hour, it'll be your turn to ask me anything. We got some good stuff?
I think so.
All right, looking forward to that. As always, at the bottom of the hour, one of the bellwether elections that we were not anticipating being so until about a month ago, when Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds not just shocked us, but shocked the country, and saying she was not going to run for re-election, that a decade in the governor's office there at Terrace Hill was enough. And given the fact this is still, at least for now, the first in the nation caucus state, and maybe the state that has moved the most red in the last decade or so in the entire country, and that's the state of Iowa, given where it was to where it is now. All right. So what happens next with the Iowa governor's race? Because it's kind of a microcosm of what's happening around the country in the Republican Party as well. We'll get into that with Bob Vanderplaats coming up at the bottom of the hour. But before we do, here's Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away? Brought to you by self-deportations. According to Fox News, the Trump administration is adding a new strategy to their deportation program using the retrofitted Customs and Border Protection phone application the Biden administration used to facilitate the importation of millions of illegals. The Trump administration is using that same app to help illegals self-deport. The administration says illegals can hop on the app, register, and they'll be given a one-way airline flight to their home country along with a $1,000 stipend. The administration says this method of deportation will be over 70% less expensive than conventional arrests and deportations. The confirmation of Trump's pick to be the head prosecutor for the federal government in the District of Columbia, Ed Martin, continues to be held up, likely by the typical cadre of America-hating Republicans like Bill Cassidy, John Cornyn, Tom Tillis, Susan Collins, just to name a few. Martin is currently acting U.S. Attorney of D.C., according to Charlie Kirk at TPUSA. If Martin is not confirmed by Senate Republicans before May 20th, radical pissant Judge James Boasberg will get to choose his replacement. Speaking of radical judges, a judge in D.C. recently said the Trump administration acted unconstitutionally in pulling the security clearance of Perkins Coie. That's the law firm which has acted on behalf of oodles of Democrats and was the center of the Steele dossier, which became one of the origins of the Russian collusion hoax. On trade aboard Air Force One yesterday, Trump says deals could be announced this week.
It could very well be. Nobody understands. We we're negotiating with many countries. But at the end of this, I'll set my own deals because I set the deal. They don't set the deal. I set the deal. They've been ripping us off for years. I set the deal. Every country, almost without fail, friend and foe, has been ripping us off for years. So we're meeting with almost all of them.
Also, President Trump made a bunch of people very mad online over the weekend after he posted an AI-generated image depicting himself in papal vestments. One of the worst individuals who was very mad online is Bill Kristol, who demanded the outrage of Catholic Vice President J.D. Vance over the meme, to which Vance replied, quote, "As a general rule, I'm fine with people telling jokes and not fine with people starting stupid wars that kill thousands of my countrymen," end quote.
Boom. Roasted.
Back to immigration and border security. CNN is now sympathetically interviewing foreign terrorists. Here's a CNN reporter with a member of a Mexican cartel.
This man is talking to us on the condition we hide his identity and location.
Can I pull up a chair?
He says he produces fentanyl for the Sinaloa cartel.
How safe or dangerous is this area to be in?
En estos momentos todas las áreas son peligrosas.
I mean, according to the Trump administration, you are a terrorist. I mean, the cartels have been labeled a foreign terrorist organization. What do you make of that?
Está fea la situación, ¿verdad? Está fea la situación, pero pues todos tenemos que comer.
For those of you listening, the cartel man says when asked about being designated as a foreign terrorist, quote, "We have to eat." Speaking of terrorists, Anthony Fauci finally says something I agree with.
Do not accept and shrug your shoulders at the normalization of untruths, because we're living in an era now, there's so much distortion of reality, outright fabrication, lying, conspiracy theories, that it's so prevalent that people sort of shrug their shoulders and say, well, nothing to do about it, it's the new normal. No. Do not accept that as the new normal.
Correct, which is why you should be in prison. Speaking of people who should probably be in prison, California State Senator Scott Wiener is saying the quiet part out loud.
We know that the sex offender registry contains a massive array of crimes, including, having sex in a car or in a park. That gets you on the sex offender registry. We also know that LGBTQ people have been massively and disproportionately targeted and subjected to being slammed onto the sex offender registry. That's the whole history of the sex offender registry.
Learning Chinese today. Today's phrase is, it's always the ones you most expect.
总是你最期待的.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Hey, good reminder, because especially that last clip, I mean, we were saying things like this on platforms like this 10 years ago that they tried to cancel us for. Now they're just admitting this stuff out loud. Okay. A good reminder, folks. That's why you need to support what we do here at Blaze TV. All right. Get a discounted subscription today. Just $8 a month. The cost of one of your big box store coffees that you're getting each day is all it will cost you to have direct access, unique, exclusive access to everything we do, both ahead of and behind the paywall here at Blaze TV. Go to blazetv.com/Deace. Use the code Deace to get your discounted subscription today. blazetv.com/Deace, code Deace at blazetv.com/Deace. So I want to make sure I just follow my train of thought here. Our very first openly bisexual U.S. Senator, her name was Sin Amma, correct? Sin Amma, that was her name?
And I forgot to tell you, and I saw her at the airport.
Did you?
I forgot to tell you.
Yeah. Sin Amma, that was the very first openly bisexual legislator.
Correct.
Okay, now she actually turned out to be a fairly good public servant. Ideology aside, okay, but just making an observation here. Sin Amma, that was her name, right? Okay. Our very first openly homosexual presidential candidate, his last name was Buttigieg. Correct? I'm 2 for 2 on this?
This is true.
All right, so our very first openly homosexual presidential candidate, his last name was Buttigieg.
Yes.
And it was literally spelled B-U-T-T. Correct, right?
Yes.
2 for 2?
Yes.
Okay. The California state legislator who's on the record admitting and saying out loud stuff that, again, we were saying on platforms like this a decade ago that they tried to get us all canceled for. Just openly admitting, there's just rainbow jihadists littered throughout the sex offender registry. His last name is Wiener. Come on, man.
Wait till you hear about the senator from South Carolina. His last name is... Wait, am I playing this game right?
This is just overt demonic trolling at this point. I mean, just literally overt demonic trolling. These cannot be coincidences. Sin ama, but a jij, and wiener. It can't be a coincidence. And, you know, we are commanded by our Lord to understand the signs of the times. So, yeah, this is a bit of a humorous ha, 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 but notice I'm not doing a lot of laughing. To me, when I say this is demonic trolling, we are the laugh track.
Correct.
We're being laughed at. Right now, in some deep, dark, black mold that Aaron just promulgated out of his ground over the weekend, abyss within the bowels of hell, some scaly-skinned being with a forked tongue has literally just urinated themselves, laughing at us. And that they can just do this now, like right to our faces. We are the laugh track. This cannot be a coincidence. It just simply cannot be. His last name could have been literally anything. Her last name could have been literally anything. Why not Pete Simpson? Pete Smith, Pete Mitchell. Could have been literally anything. It had to be but a jij. It had to be. Yes, it did. Because this is what Nefarious does when he thinks he has won. He plants his flag and lets you know about it.
And an important, the most brilliant theme of your entire book, because you're making it right now, is that he's planting that flag and he's telling you you can't stop it. And here's the thing, why we're the laugh track. You can't stop it because you don't want to stop it anymore. That's when helping you edit that book, Steve, reading a chapter, that continuous theme, the taunting of something that you now embrace in your freedom. It's absolutely chilling, and it's why the whole thing works.
This brings me to the story of what's going on with Ed Martin at the moment. All right. So, again, I have known Ed Martin for years. We just had Ed on the show right after the election.
Yeah.
And I got to know Ed. You know, we were all just at Heritage last week. The last time, folks, that I was at Heritage Foundation, I was brought there on behalf of Eagle Forum, and the late, great Phyllis Schlafly was still alive. And she just took a liking to me very early in my career and late in her life, and introduced me to Ed, who was her heir apparent. And her and Ed brought me out to Eagle Forum in Washington, D.C. to do a presentation on Rules for Patriots, my 10 Commandments of Political Warfare, to a group of young minds, skulls of mush, as Rush used to say. That, that was 2014. So I guarantee at least one of those young people in that room is working on Capitol Hill, either as a staffer or as a member of Congress, probably right now as we speak, at least one. And at least another one is doing the same in some red state house somewhere in America right now. While I was there, by the way, on that the night before I was doing that presentation the next morning at Heritage, as a guest of Phyllis Schlafly and Ed Martin, the night before is when the inspiration for a nefarious plot took place, was on that exact same trip. That exact same trip. And Ed has been a warrior for conservative causes for many, many years. Those of you that want justice done for what was done to us, he's the exact kind of U.S. attorney that you want. And when we had Ed on the show, he was actually going to be, I think it was chief of staff for Russ Vought at OMB. That was actually the job he was going to get originally, correct? Mm-hmm. And then President Trump said, no, you're in line for an upgrade. I'm going to make you the U.S. attorney for this district of D.C. And it is because Ed, along with Phyllis, gave a shot to a young activist like me many years ago, it is because he will be the exact kind of U.S. attorney that the vast majority of people that voted for Donald Trump in this last presidential election want. It is precisely for that reason that those same Republicans who only have their offices because we elected them don't want to vote for him. And this is why. It's not because he will not serve our interest well, but because he will. And this is this vortex we are in, and I honestly don't know a way out of it. I really don't. And even though this last election felt like for a moment we at least saved the country from next stop perdition unraveling, there are still many days where it feels like we're at the end of the game and we're just fouling to extend the game, to stop. We're still behind. We made a valiant comeback, but we're still behind, right? And so you guys see this particularly in postseason games and March Madness. They just go on and on and on and on and on, because if you lose, your season is over. And so, and every once in a while, the other team will have the yips and choke enough free throws that you can have the miraculous comeback. But 90% of the time, at least, if you're the team fouling at the end of the game to extend the game, you're going to lose. But you're just trying to keep the clock stopped. You're trying to extend the game as long as you can, hoping something against hope. Some break happens, something happens that gives you that last minute comeback that we're going to be doing like 30 for 30s about years from now, and talking to our kids about and watching YouTube clips of, years from now. Given who we are aligned with and how many of them sit in seats we gave them in the U.S. Congress right now, because the alternative was, hey, prison, gulags, we trans your kids in public. Drag queen story time hour is now kindergarten at your school. That was the alternative, basically, right? Yeah. So we didn't have much of one. So again, we thought, let's prolong the game. Let's stretch the game out, all right? And put fools like John Cornyn in, who doesn't want to vote for Ed Martin. John Cornyn is facing a primary. He's currently losing in the polls. So now stop and think about this.
Yeah.
John Cornyn is facing a primary to Ken Paxton. He is currently losing. There's not a public poll around that has him winning that right now.
Todd, what's your phrase? Invincible ignorance?
Yeah.
So, well, Steve, we could leverage these guys. John Cornyn doesn't seem really leverageable right about now. No, what he thinks, here's what John Cornyn thinks. What John Cornyn thinks is I'll post some dopey picture on X of me reading Art of the Deal, and that'll be enough to satiate Trump from endorsing against me and get a bunch of his cultic followers. That's what he thinks of you guys. To just completely overlook the fact that I have shanked you more times than you can count. You're walking, you don't even realize you're walking bow-legged because you're doing it, you're limping on both legs now. And you'll just forget the whole thing and keep growing my pension for me. And with all due respect to our own side, it ain't like John Cornyn has no reason to believe that might work.
Correct.
It's worked up until this point. But see, now he's got a real primary challenger. Now he has somebody with statewide name ID. Now he has somebody in Ken Paxton who's taken some scalps. So you would think, man, he'd be scrambling to come up with like low-lying fruit to satiate the masses. Nope. Can't even get him to vote for Ed Martin as U.S. attorney. And this is why Nefarious is not very happy with how the last election results went. But he ain't exactly sweating it out either, still. Because we have systemic disadvantages that must be addressed. Anthony Fauci, whether he lives or dies, given his age, he's well into his 80s, is just a member of a hydra. There will just be another. And whoever that person is will be the embodiment of that goofy meme, I'll bleep and do it again. Because no one's been held accountable. There's no tribunals. No one's held accountable. So what possible incentive would they have to not just do it again? Get that Peter Horitz, whatever the hell that dude's name is. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Hotep?
Hotep, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Another, I think a fourth coronavirus is probably coming in the next few years.
Well, what's in the next few years, guys? What would be in the next few years?
Another election.
Another presidential election would be in the next few years, yeah. The play here is very obvious. And I say this respectfully because I know there are people like this Insurrection Barbie who's grown a huge following on X. She's a little bit like Data Republican that we had on. She's done a lot of great work in skullduggery. I don't begrudge her following at all. I mean, I follow her work. I've posted it many, many times. I'm appreciative of it, okay? But you can kind of tell who's kind of new at this. You know what I'm saying? You can kind of tell who the last few years, because of how close to the lip of the black hole we got, and just how different Trump sounded and what he represented from everything else was. You can kind of tell who this is their first lap around Team GOP track. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And again, you can't know what you don't know. You can't know what you don't know. And these people are like incredulous that Congress is doing nothing. I'm not happy about it, but have I been all that really incredulous? No.
Well, you've seen things.
Yeah, I've seen some things. I've done this before. There have been attempts. This is very much like I've equivocated situationally Trump and Luther before. There were men before Luther who tried to do what Luther did. It wasn't like just one Augustinian monk got up one day and said, I've got some ideas here. There were other attempts. But the critical mass that it took to get the message out to the masses, a Christian inventor by the name of Johannes Gutenberg inventing a printing press, didn't exist. That's why you didn't hear about some of those other attempts before him. There have been attempts to disrupt this process before. They just weren't by billionaires with 100% name ID. But this isn't, this has been tried before, what Trump is doing. Sometimes there've been like whole movements called like the Tea Party. Remember that when that was a thing? This has been tried before. But the timing wasn't right. Didn't have somebody with almost limitless resources and 100% name ID that could accomplish or overcome those two primary objectives to being something sustainable. But all the complaints and laments that you guys have, we've had these all before. We've done this all before. The one constant through all the years, Ray, has been the Republican Party. America rolls on like a steam engine, and so does the Republican Party. That's really what doesn't change. The people who sanctimoniously lectured me, Ron DeSantis was part of some kind of conservative movement. And I kept telling them, no, he's not. That's exactly why I like what he's doing. Because the only way that stuff like what he wants to do will get done is if a singular person stands up athwart of the tide and says, I'm the one. I'll do it. That's the only way. There is no movement. There is no movement. Now the dude can't get anything past his own legislature. And people are trying to, because they want the power that he has. They're basically trying to screw the state and label a very successful nonprofit started by his wife as some kind of grifting, like it's the Clinton Foundation. When all it does is coordinate for nonprofits around the state of Florida of how to quickly reach people in need. So it can be done in the private sector and not through government. That's it, man. Because that's the Republican Party, guys. The same thing I've said about the judges for the last 2 months applies to this Congress. Most of this Congress is waiting him out and is totally fine losing 30 House seats and losing the majority next year. Because what they're going to do when that happens is they're going to come back to all of you and raise a crap ton of money off you. Poop tons. Grandma Moses in deep red rural Louisiana will be sending $50. There won't be $50 in their grandbaby's birthday card next year. But come 2027, that's because they had to send that last little bit to John What's-His-Nuts Kennedy, the senator, who does nothing but go on Fox News 3 times a week with folksier clips than Lindsey Graham, then turn around and screw you every bit as hard. And you're saving America, of course. We've done all this before. Over and over and over again. So the same thing applies here. Just like Russian collusion wasn't going to stop unless the independent counsel's office was shut down. And eventually, Trump did that by hiring Bill Barr. Just like the scamdemic wasn't going to stop without getting rid of Fauci Burks, but he didn't do that, right?
Right.
The judicial tyrannists are not going to stop unless he stops them. Just says, cool story, bro. I've got a government to run. They're not going to stop. This Congress will not do what you want unless he makes it happen. He is going to have to put his thumb on the scale. He is going to have to threaten these people. Again, I feel kind of crappy that we keep asking one person and one part of this equation to do all the heavy lifting here. But to quote the great prophet Richard Gere in An Officer and a Gentleman, we got nowhere else to go. There's nowhere else to go. We had 2 shining light governors. One of them's decided suddenly to retire. The other one is they're essentially trying to impeach. Just not calling it that, but that's effectively what they're trying to do to DeSantis this last 2 years, just impeach him. This is it. This is the last stand, man. And I'm just telling you right now, they're not going to get it. If John Cornyn, facing a primary where he is publicly losing it by every objective measure, still cannot bring himself to vote for Ed Martin for U.S. Attorney and is willing to just keep taking the slings and arrows from Ken Paxton over, because he keeps hitting him over this, even in a primary that he's currently losing, he still thinks he can just wait this whole thing out. If you can't leverage him, you tell me who you can leverage then. Tell me who you can. You got one piece of leverage. His name is Donald Trump. Trump is going to have to threaten these people. I don't know another way out. Can you guys think of some other way I have not thought of that doesn't ask yet again while the White House is taking on 70,000 things before breakfast? Hey, can you guys add one more? But I can't think of another way this is going to get fixed in time to not lose 40 House seats next year. Can you think of a way? Because I can't.
No, the abstinence of these Republicans is matching what you see with Maine, Minnesota, Colorado on transgender issues. They refuse to stop doing what they're doing. This makes just as little sense unless you believe that this is what their religion actually is. And yes, Donald Trump should expose it.
We made fun of, rightfully so and deservedly so, Tim Walz going out there and saying last week, I was put on the ticket as a permission structure so that white dudes who like football and working on their transmissions could vote for the Democrat Party. Permission structure, ha ha ha. And that's why I want to vote, or that's why I want to run for president again. Allegedly, that's what some people are saying about Tim Walz. That doesn't make any sense. I failed my stated purpose, and that's why I'm running again. We made fun of that, deservedly so. It's the same thing with some of these Republicans. Yep. It's the same sort of magical, deluded thinking that is getting them nowhere, and of course, getting the entire country nowhere or somewhere really bad, really fast.
Exactly why here in a state like Iowa, we cannot run a member of Congress for governor. That is a great way to lose next year and bring the Iowa Democratic Party back and turn our state blue. We'll talk about that in a moment. Full Folks, did you know that our friends at Fast Growing Trees have the biggest online nursery here in the U.S.? And of course, spring is landscaping season, planting season. They've got thousands of different plants, over 2 million happy customers. They've got everything your yard needs, from fruit trees to privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and so much more. Whatever you're interested in, Fast Growing Trees has you covered. I know that big of an online menu may seem daunting, but every time Amy and I have gone there, we've navigated it pretty simply. And we're not that smart. Plus, you get support from trained plant experts on call to help you plan your landscaping and choose the right plants for you and how to care for them as well. So this spring, they've got the best deals for your yard, up to half off on select plants and other deals. And listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code Deace at checkout. That's an additional 15% off their everyday low prices when it's your first time through at fastgrowingtrees.com/Deace. Use the code Deace to save today. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code Deace at checkout. Fastgrowingtrees.com, code Deace at checkout for the discount. Offer valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. All right, let's bring in our good friend Bob Vanderplaats here from the Family Leader. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I think I could use some of those fast-growing trees this time of the year.
So I did a lot of traveling here in the last week, as you well know.
Yeah,
and
welcome back.
Thank you. Got asked quite a bit. I mean, I'm getting asked quite a bit about our governor's race.
Sure.
Because essentially the time between the Trump terms, a very small group of governors, Ron DeSantis, Brian Kemp to some degree in Georgia, and then, of course, our very own Kim Reynolds, basically were essentially the Republican Party in absentia. Right? I mean, they basically were the Joint Chiefs of Staff here of resistance against the last 4 years.
Sure they were.
And what was attempted to be done to the entire country. So there is great concern about this. And I put up a post this morning over on X just on the governor's race and where it stands. And I have to tell you, it has gotten quite a bit of engagement and traction. There is a great deal of interest in this race around the country.
I believe this will be the number one governor's race in the country. It'll be nationalized. I think Democrats are hopeful. I think, Steve, you said Democrats have hope because the Queen is dead, in their opinion.
Yep.
And so also now that they have the hope, they're going to pour a lot of money in. They have this guy named Rob Sand, who's the state auditor, who will be fiscal sanity, taxpayers watchdog, all the Republican-type issues, try to get the Republican base. They see an opportunity here, and we'll see what happens, who emerges out of the Republican field.
Let's start on the Democratic side of this race, all right? Because it was very clear the plan was Rob Sand, I've raised all this money. I'm the only statewide office holder the Democratic Party has left. Many of its leaders that have been known in our state for many years have been completely wiped out. I mean, one of my best friends just took out one of their highest rated members yet, or left in last year's election when he was underfunded like 10-1. Okay, so Rob Sand is sitting on whatever money the Democratic Party has left. He is sitting on it as we speak. The hope was run unopposed, stay away from the Aztec rituals they call a primary over there, and just try to keep your head down and come out of here and pretend I'm some old style rural Iowa Democrat, that I might just be a communist, but I'm not crazy. I'm nothing to fear. Right? That was the hope. But recently he has received, it looks like, a primary opponent from the very kind of woke white woman that just absolutely dominates Democratic primaries everywhere. Used to work with the child murderers at Planned Parenthood. Some of the places or some of the campaigns she's worked on, Mazie Hirono, who is maybe the absolute stupidest Soviet in the United States Senate. I mean, Kamala Harris called and said that might be a single-digit IQ. And then Pete Buttigieg, she ran his presidential campaign in Iowa. So to me, that is good news for our side if she does get in the race, because she's going to run him through all their stations of the cross, brother. Okay, I mean, she's by the time by next June, Rob Sand will agree to trans children dropped off on his front porch if we can get her into the race. So talk about that to start with.
Well, there's no doubt. Where Rob Sand was hoping to go in without a primary, not only is he sitting on the money that the Democrat Party has in the state of Iowa, whatever's left of that, he's got a basically unlimited amount personally through his in-laws that will dump a lot of money into his campaign. And he just did a message focus group about going to church every Sunday, going out hunting, all this type of stuff that'd be Republican type issues, rural Iowa voter issues, not expecting that a primary would emerge. Mm-hmm. But a primary emerged not just from his left, but from his far left. Mm-hmm. And so now he's going to have to debate that. And there's a lot of people in the Democrat Party who would be akin to the people in the Republican parties going, I want to know how right you are. So, Steve, like you said before, you'll never beat Donald Trump by being to his left. You got to get to his right.
Yep.
That's in the Iowa caucuses. In this case, you'll never beat Rob Sand by being to his right. You got to be way left. And that's what she's doing. And she's going to force him to go way left and take stands on issues he does not want to take stands on. That helps out the Republicans. The only advantage I can see to Rob Sand is that I've seen this over and over and over again. Primaries make you a better candidate. They make you hone your message. They make you be sharp on a debate stage. They make you defend stuff before you get into the bright lights of a nationalized campaign, and this will be a nationalized campaign.
But he will also have to be defending issues to the left of what he was planning his own messaging to be. But just systematically, I think functionally you are correct. All right. Yep. So that kind of is a microcosm of the tension that exists nationally in the Democratic Party. I see Gavin Newsom is out with another message again this morning. We have to accept we lost. We have to accept we lost the popular vote. People were upset about illegal aliens. People thought we were too woke. All right. And we couldn't even beat Donald Trump, right? So he's trying yet again to fashion himself as some kind of candidate of rational pragmatism in the Democratic side, but that's really not where their base really is. No.
And people are upset that men are playing against women, in sports, and all of a sudden you got to have Rob Sand go, I'm all for that. Otherwise, he risks losing the Democrat primary.
And so there's the tension that exists on their side.
Sure.
All right. So here's where we're at on our side. Is we have had two members of Congress, by and large, and I'm going to put this as nicely as I can because you're here.
Okay.
I would not put it as nicely if you weren't. Because you're here, and these people will talk to you because you're nicer than me.
Sure.
Let's just, how do I put this? Our congressional delegation is to the left of where the state of Iowa and the Republican Party of Iowa is as a whole. And that is maybe the absolute nicest way that I could put it. Fair?
I don't know. And the reason I say I don't know is tell me what Congress has gotten done. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, Mike Johnson and others would say, this has been a tough, Chip Roy would say, this has been a tough thing to move anything through Congress. So I'm looking at, what have you gotten done? The good news, Zach Nunn has said he's not going to run. So basically, he's off the table.
Ashley Hinson has said she's not going to run.
And Marinette Miller Meeks has said she's not going to run. So 3 of the 4 congressional Congress people say they are not going to run. Randy Feinster, though, has not come out and declared he's not going to run. That said, if I'm Zach Nunn or if I'm Randy Feinster, I might go, take a look at Congress. Let me tell you what I'm dealing with in Congress. Let me tell you what I did as a legislator. And they've got a lot of things that they can talk about that they did in the legislature, both Randy Feinster and Zach Nunn, because Kim Reynolds didn't do this alone. Mm-hmm. So whether it's making Iowa way better off with tax policy and regulatory policy or heartbeat bills or defunding Planned Parenthood, all that stuff was done with their votes as well, and some of it with their leadership. So I'm not saying I'm giving them an out for Congress, but I'm just looking at Congress as a whole. I think where America's looking at Congress as a whole, 19% approval rating maybe, which begs the bigger question. And I lived this.
Yep. 2006, when you were Jim Nussel's lieutenant governor nominee.
When I'm running for governor, and it's an open seat, and Jim Nussel, a very popular congressman from eastern Iowa, was going to run for governor as well. And I said, listen, you may be right on all the issues, but Congress has got such a bad taste in people's mouths today. I'm afraid we're going to lose your seat in eastern Iowa. We'll get Nancy Pelosi being speaker, and we're going to get a guy like Chet Culver being governor of Iowa because you're a congressman right now. Mm-hmm. And, of course, that was all discounted. It all came true. The bigger issue is, can you run as a congressman today for the state's executive and have the people of Iowa feel good about it? Randy has got a good record when it comes to his state Senate. The Congress thing is the thing that a lot of people are going to have to wrestle with.
I think it is an absolutely terrible idea to run a member of Congress in the environment next year for all the reasons that you just said. Well, I think it is an absolutely terrible idea. And if I am the Democrats, the idea of running somebody that still, by and large, most Iowans do not know in Rob Sand, and he's got all that money over there to rebrand himself.
You bet.
Against a sitting member of Congress. There's not much that 80% of Americans agree on right now. Okay. A couple of them are, men are not women. That's about 80% right now. Okay. That we've got too many damn illegal aliens in the country. That's about 80% right now. Okay. And by the way, Randy and Zach, I mean, they're in bodies that could be codifying as we speak right now, the president's platform, and they're not doing so. The other thing is everybody hates Congress because of some of the reasons you just said on every side. I just think it is an absolutely you immediately, if you're the Democrats, you get to run, you get to nationalize this election, and you get to run against the Congress. You don't have to even run again. The name is irrelevant. Just Congressman fill in the blank. It doesn't matter what name is after that. It doesn't matter what they did 10 years ago in the Iowa legislature when half the people voting didn't even care. All right. Running on Congressman so-and-so, I think that is an absolutely terrible idea.
Yeah. So just for full disclosure, I'm friends of both Zach and Randy. And so Steve likes to say I'm a little bit nicer than him, but I'm actually friends with them. The thing is, you take a look at Iowa governorship throughout history, and it doesn't take long to say who was governor. Bob Ray, Terry Branstad, and then you went to Tom Vilsack, and then you went to Chet Culver, and then you went to Terry Branstad, and then you went to Kim Reynolds. The one thing all of them have in common is none of them were ever in Washington, D.C. to lead the state. So there's a history pattern there. The only way, Zach is out, so the only way if I'm Randy, if I run for governor, it's got to be almost positional. Listen, I am so tired of a dysfunctional Congress where you can get nothing done, at least in the Iowa legislature. Here's what we got done. I want to go back to where we can get something done. That would be his selling point.
To me, I think we have to run somebody, you just mentioned it, somebody who's considered somewhat of a political outsider from the environment that we are currently in, and maybe there's somebody that is both of those things, although I can't think of somebody who is both of what I'm about to say. Or we need someone who has already won a statewide election and has a statewide presence in the state.
And so the only person that would be is you look at Brenna Byrd.
Yep.
And Brenna Byrd, who went out and endorsed Trump, and she's now the Attorney General, and she's well-liked, has a lot of big law enforcement. And I know that she's looking at as well, will she get in? Won't she get in? Will she come in with Trump's endorsement or not come in with Trump's endorsement? That'll be a big thing. But Steve, let me be, just up front with you here for a minute. I've gotten a lot of feedback, even in our own team meeting that I was in right before I came in here, about am I going to run for governor? I do not feel called to run for governor. I do not have a fire in my belly to run for governor. That's not what I want to do. I've said I'll leave the door open and look at it in the fall. But I'm telling you right now, I feel called to be the leader of the family leader, not running for governor. That said, Steve, I know you have entertained that same question. Steve, you're very interested in this governor's race. Is this something that you want to do? Is this something that you go, I want to put my hat in the ring because I just believe the way things are going right now, we need a complete outsider and someone who is passionate about the issues that we're passionate about?
Amy and I have talked for the last year about doing this in the future, particularly following what we had hoped and assumed would be another successful 4-year term with Kim Reynolds. It's obviously something that has been discussed. We've discussed it in our home, even as a family, since Kim shocked us all with this announcement the last month. I need to also feel like it is a calling. I mean, this is a major undertaking. I think people that have never done it before, you have, or been around it before, as I have, really don't understand how much of an undertaking that it is. Right now I've got a son I need to graduate later this month and celebrate, and this is his month. Next month, my wife has to have a minor surgery, if there is such a thing, that's going to take a couple of weeks to recover from. And I got a book coming out I'm very proud of.
Interesting word.
Yeah. Given what it's about. Yeah. But I can't sit here and say that it's 100% nothing I would consider doing, or that I would. I just think right now, let me say this. I think this process would be made a lot simpler if Brenna decided to run and had the backing of the White House. She's close enough to where we are. And combined with the support of the White House, she's already won a statewide election. I think she would be a formidable candidate for the Democrats to defeat next year. I think I think of the people talked about right now, she is the best option. And I frankly don't even think it's close. All right. But if she does not run and she has a small child at home, and right now she has a 9-to-5 job as Attorney General and she doesn't, well, then if she does not run, I mean, I think both you and I, frankly, Need to sit down later this summer and have a serious conversation about who else is in this race and what the environment is, because I do not believe a member of Congress is the right way to go at all. I think we need someone who has run a statewide election or an outsider. The environment next year will be hard enough. And I think we need to run somebody who has a success of winning statewide and or can run without the stain of being a member of Congress on them. I do.
Well, it's well said, and I'm glad you explained it. The things I would hit on is that for you, for anybody who's choosing to get in this race, and a lot of them are friends, quite frankly, is are you called to run? You need to go through, it can't be a political calculation or some other calculation. Are you called to run? Two is, when you take a look at the general election, the big deal is you got to win the general election, right? Mm-hmm. I think Julie Stouch, I think it's her name, who's running against Rob Sand, she just made the general election a little bit easier, I think.
I agree.
And so not saying it will be an easy deal. It's going to be a nationalized campaign. Can you weather the hot spotlights? And so whether it's Congressman Feenstra, whether it's Steve Deace, whether it's Brenna Byrd, whether it's Brad Sherman, whether it's Pat Grassley, whether it's
Bob Vanderplaats,
whether it's a businessman, my deal is, get better in the primary. But this is one of those things where I'd say it's a must-win for us. Success is in succession. Kim Reynolds has been a great partner for us, especially the family leader leading on all the issues that we care about. How do you hand off that baton? So I think a lot of eyes are going to be on Iowa coming up in the midterms because of the congressional races, but now because of the number one governor's race in the country.
I agree. I think that I think people, and I said this after we won this last election nationally, as hard as this election was to win, and as hard as it was to assemble this coalition, and you're seeing this play out now every day, maintaining this coalition and governing with it is going to be even harder.
Yeah.
All right, you're seeing that now with just a complete fecklessness from the U.S. Congress and what's going on with the judicial, insurrection against the administration and everything else. As hard as the work of the last decade plus was of moving this state, as red as it was, I think people do not understand it will be even harder to maintain just the ground we've already taken. And I just don't believe somebody who has served in the U.S. Congress for the last however many years has that in them. Because if they did, we'd see it. We'd see the sense of urgency. We'd see it. I mean, if I were going to run in a primary, I'd pray to run against Randy Feenstra. That's a target-rich environment. I could channel all of the base angst against the Republican Congress and make him an absolute symbol for all of it. Back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. And you can all let us know what you think about what we think, though hopefully not all at once. Steve at stevedeace.com is how you can email us. Like us on Facebook, we, and Gab. You can also find me and follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube. We had well over 50,000 followers on our previous YouTube page, and we were getting like hundreds of views because of all the censorship there. And by the way, there should be an update. I told you guys months ago that I was going to find myself a national conservative law firm about what happened to me and the censorship we faced, particularly in light of what we learned about USAID, that the U.S. federal government under Joe Biden was not just advocating that big tech, just violating the First Amendment, frankly, by advocating for big tech to censor people like us. But then we found out from USAID that they were now going, this is now antitrust. They were now perpetuating and advancing a counter narrative to the people they were censoring. I should have an update on that for you shortly. I have procured a conservative legal firm, and I should have an update on that for you in the coming days and weeks. We have actually been working on this case for about 2 months. So there's a reason why I haven't talked about this the entire time. As the kids say today, real gangsters move in silence. By the way, it's also why I have not spent a lot of time publicly talking about the governor's race in Iowa. I had some people come to me early this winter and say, listen, we are trying to leverage Joni Ernst, particularly on the Pete Hegseth front, and we're trying to come up with people with names that could really primary her to pressure her. You mind if we throw your name out there? I was fine with it. But I kept saying the entire time, because I'm never going to lie to you guys, I don't want to be a U.S. Senator. On the other hand, if Trump wants to hand me a U.S. Senate seat, kind of hard to say no to that, but that's what it would take. I have zero desire to be a U.S. Senator. This is different. And this is my home state. It's where I was born. It's where all my children were born. It's where my parents will die. It's where I will, more than likely. It's where my grandkids are being born. And there is quite a lot at stake. Simple things, like going to Pella, Iowa yesterday for tulip time with your grandkid and seeing a place that's clean and safe. These are things you cannot take for granted if you live in states like Minnesota and Colorado anymore. These are things you cannot take for granted if you live in states like my former home state of Michigan anymore, where you can't go a block anywhere on any side of the street and not get a contact buzz from Icky Sticky. When I was a kid, it was so exciting when my stepdad said we're going to move to California because there's some good construction jobs out there with the Reagan era boom, how glamorous it was. Years later, my oldest daughter, Anastasia, went out to California. We've allowed the kids we paid for them all to take some kind of a senior trip of someplace they wanted to go when they graduated. She wanted to see Hollywood and Rodeo Drive, so we helped Anna to go out there. She called me. I just literally walked by a homeless guy taking a dump here on the sidewalk, Dad. What is this place? We are up against real evil here. And those of you that are stuck living in those states that I just mentioned, you know what I'm talking about. If you're a Christian parent in Colorado right now, you have your head on a swivel wondering, when does that knock on the door come for me? And the tendency with human beings when we have a measure of success is just to settle down and rest in it. And that's how you end up with a state like Iowa becoming redder than Texas in the first place. Even 15 years ago when I started on WHO radio, the idea of someone running for governor who had been a lobbyist for Planned Parenthood and ran the presidential campaign of a mayor of a podunk and frankly crap hole town called South Bend, Indiana. You ever been there? It's a giant pothole, and then there's the Notre Dame campus. The rest of it is literally a giant pothole. And the idea that you could run for governor on, hey, I used to be on the board of Planned Parenthood, and I ran a guy's presidential campaign whose only qualification was he likes to have homosexual sex with other men. And literally has no other qualification. Nothing about him that is interesting at all. Nothing at all. Even 15 years ago when I was on WHO, the idea that you would do that in a state like Iowa would just get laughed right off of the page. Now they see a little bit of an opening with Kim Reynolds' retirement. Let the freak flag fly. And I will not just sit here and do nothing while a bunch of mediocre, and that might be kind people, decide to run who clearly have demonstrated with the power already vested in them, they don't have what it takes to stand up to this. I've got plenty of other things to do. I work 18-hour days already. So I am more than happy. I am more than happy if somebody like Brenna, who at least won maybe the biggest Supreme Court decision in Iowa history when she defended our heartbeat bill, if she wants to do this, she's already won statewide, happy to do what I can to help. But to have these members of Congress, if we gave Randy Feenstra, Zach Nunn, who's my congressman, or any of your congressmen, with a handful of exceptions, we gave them the Doge test and say, what 5 things should you do today? And calling a donor isn't one of them. What'd you do? Think we'd be satisfied or disappointed by what was on the list, guys? What do you think?
Neither. We would be incensed.
We'd be incensed. And that's who we're going to send? You have a majority in Congress, and you can't even decide whether you can vote with a kid or not, who the speaker's going to be. And I'm going to invest the entire future of our state and my kids and grandkids into that, just so I can sit here a few years from now When the inevitable happens, if that occurs, and I'm bitching and moaning about it, and 7,000 people line up my inbox and say, hey, Steve, why didn't you do something about it when you could have? That's what I'm wrestling with. And that's why I've not said much about it until today. Because this is not a stunt. This is not sure throw my name out there for see if we can get Joni Ernst to vote for Pete Hegseth and cool if it works, great. And on with the rest of my life. This literally is a decision that will determine the rest of my life and the lives of millions of other people. And at the very least, I hope that me indicating I am watching this closely and considering this might at least motivate some people to grow up a little bit. When I was a child, I thought and spoke as a child. I reasoned as a child, but when I became a man, I set aside childish things. It is time to man up here. There is a lot at stake here. And the idea we're just going to sit here and work so hard as we did for the last 10 or 15 years just to hand this over to a guy like Randy Feenstra, a member of Congress who has done literally nothing. Nothing. I promise anyone within the sound of my voice right now, just by the mere action of tuning into this show, you have done more for this country today than Randy Feenstra has. I promise you. And I don't even know what's on his schedule the rest of the day. I promise you. That's true. Because Randy Feenstra is just is an archetype of about all but 7 or 8 of every one of the rest of the Republicans up there, which is why they've not done a damn thing since January. They've been in that office for 3 weeks longer than Trump. What have they done? And that's who we're going to send out to defend our honor? Nope. We're not. Not if I have anything to say about it. And I live here. And I've got a pretty big platform. So I do. The only thing I can think of dumber than trying to do this myself is entrusting me and my kids' futures to the likes of Randy frickin' Feenstra. That's about as dumb as it gets. Or any of the rest of these members of Congress anywhere else around the country. So no, that's why I've been very vague about this. I've not talked a bunch about it. Frankly, I've not even talked to Todd and Aaron about this until while we were in D.C. alone was the first time we've even discussed that. Is that not true?
That's true.
I have had lots of conversations about this privately. Because I am deeply concerned about where this is going. And it is not a joke. Thankfully, we at least have an organization like Bob's. So we have some floor. They don't have anything like that in California, Michigan, the rest of these states. But it does not take too many L's before everything you built and everything you worked so hard for is gone. And the people being discussed here need to understand that. This is not a game. This is not, hey, I'll do this, or this is my latest ambition, or this special interest group wants me to do this. We are going up against people that will castrate our children if we let them. We've got a woman leaving the board of Planned Parenthood to run for governor, guys. And this is Iowa. What do you think? What the hell goes on in the rest of the country? Did we not just see Trump take a bullet to the face last year? Our enemies are very serious. And it is time to see that maybe we need to be too. Somehow I went off on that while pointing out we need you to subscribe to our new YouTube page at Deace Show on YouTube. All right, at Deace Show on YouTube. And if you guys like the podcast version of the show, please leave us a 5-star review. Thank you very much if you already have. Hit subscribe, or if you're on Apple, iTunes, follow, and that way every time we do one of these new episodes, it'll show up in your feed every single time. Before we move on to Ask Me Anything, we ran out of time there with Bob. So you guys didn't get a chance to chime in at all. So I just wanted to give you guys a chance to chime in before we moved on and conducted the business as normal around here.
Well, I'm the guy whose daughter led the fight along with Kim Reynolds in 2022 to save girls sports, and that really started a lot of the momentum for the success we've had now in 3 consecutive sessions here in Iowa. I am also basically the Donald Trump of Carlisle, Iowa, where they put aimed all their lawfare against me to try to take me out. So I think it goes without saying that if Steve's in, I'm in. The local school districts are very much the federal judges that Steve talks about, hijacking federal initiatives and that need to be handled. There's so much more to do here in Iowa, even as red as it's become. So, game on.
There was a reason the Friday Deace group that was concurrent with Governor Reynolds' announcement she was not seeking re-election. There's a reason why I predicted, that was my prediction, that Randy Feenstra would be the next governor of Iowa. I wasn't just throwing it out there. It's because it was more of a commentary on how little of a bench we have here, ready to go, and more of a commentary on absent strong leadership. The Republican Party is just going to Republican Party. It's going to go to the lowest common denominator. And from what I have seen and heard from congressmen, I'll just say congressmen and women in general, as the lowest common denominator. I mean, just game theorying this out. I would rather, let's just pretend here. Let's pretend that all of the things line up. Brenna Bird decides for whatever reason she doesn't want to run, and so you feel called to run, or Bob feels called to run. But in your case, let's say you actually would win the governorship. I would gladly take not having a job over having somebody like Feenstra, because at the end of the day, you're going to end up with a lefty like Rob Sand, who is our state auditor right now. That's going to be de facto your governor if somebody like that ends up winning. It's just a case study on how fragile liberty really is. Real liberty. And we've been talking about this ad nauseum. Look at what's going on in Florida right now. I think there's a deeper bench surrounding Donald Trump at the federal level when you talk about people like J.D. Vance, even Marco Rubio right now, a little bit deeper of a bench there than there is in a place like Iowa or Florida. But this thing is so fragile. Anything that you built can be torn down by communists at the word go, because that's all they know how to do. You have to guard it. You have to safeguard it. And I think what we're watching play out right now, or what we could be watching play out right now, I should say, is another case study of that. So you should pray for your own state, pray for our state as well, because we're in a lurch. We're in a lurch.
Let's get to Ask Me Anything. And the rest of the show now belongs to y'all who are gracious enough to send in your questions, brought to you by our friends over at Beamroll or Beam Dream. I'm sorry. I'm all worked up about the governor's race now. Okay. Because I'm very, very, very concerned. Very concerned. All right. Let's get to Beam and their Dream Powder, which I probably could take some tonight because I'm going to need a good night's sleep.
How about right now?
There's some people that take some right this minute, please. Yes. All right. I've used this on a regular basis, by the way. This stuff is great. It's great for a good night's sleep. It's got magnesium, melatonin, all the good stuff in there you need, all the natural stuff you need for the peaceful, restful, deep sleep that you need so you can wake up ornery with the kind of energy I've apparently got going right now, right? A healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients. And I know what you're thinking. The last thing I want to drink is a bunch of hot cocoa before bed, but this is not loaded with sugars and carbs. You don't have to worry about that either. All right. Plus, they're a great American company, too. And they also share a lot of the same values that we are fighting for on platforms like us here at Blaze TV. So Beam is giving you guys right now the ultimate Patriot discount up to 40% off if you want to try their best-selling Dream Powder. I like the chocolate peanut butter. I might like the other flavors. It's just anytime I see chocolate peanut butter, well, if there's not pumpkin spice, anytime I see chocolate peanut butter, I go there first, okay? So the other flavors might be great too, but I like the chocolate peanut butter because that's kind of my thing. So go to shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve at checkout. That's BEAM, shopbeam.com/Steve. Use code Steve for up to 40% off and sleep better, wake up stronger, show up ready for your family, your work, your country, because when you're well rested, you're unstoppable. And we need more people like this right about now, right? So shopbeam.com/Steve, code Steve at checkout for the discount at shopbeam.com, code Steve. All right, Aaron, let's rock and roll.
All right, Ask Deace Anything, featuring questions from your audience on Facebook. We'll start with Wendy. Do you think it would be useless to have term limits on Congress without also putting some type of term limit on the staff? Without staff term limits, wouldn't that just create a larger unelected bureaucracy running things since they have been in place for decades behind the scenes?
Let's do term limits for Congress and then hope we have that problem. I think we have to learn, folks, to tackle a problem immediately ahead of us, you know? And I've used this analogy before. When I first started getting healthy, the idea of doing this level of workout and eating like this for 6 months, a year, maybe to some degree the rest of my life, way too daunting. And if I had thought about the fact that what the next step of this was going to entail, I wouldn't have gotten past the first step. So I had to learn, I can do it today. I can do it today. All right? So let's start with term limits for Congress. And if we have to take the extra step, we can. What will be the harder thing? Term limits for everybody all at once, or term limits for Congress, and then we find out, we might want to actually take this an extra step. Clearly the latter. So let's start with the most obvious thing first. Get a W, and then worry about what the secondary or background concerns are. You know, I mean, if we keep doing this, ultimately, then why make any decisions? You know? Hey, you know, why marry this guy? He could turn out to be terrible. You're right. You could say that about literally any guy you would marry. Why marry this chick? She could turn out to be terrible. You're right. She could say that about every woman you'd possibly marry. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we have a problem immediately right ahead of us. Start there. Then worry about ancillary problems later if you have to.
Next, we go to Joel. What books and writings would you recommend to learn more about the proper role of the judicial branch and how to fight back against judicial supremacy?
Read Alexander Hamilton in Federalist 78 and 81. And you can there's a ton of research, I mean, as simple as Google out there on things Thomas Jefferson said all throughout both his public political career and then his private political correspondence once he was retired from politics as well. I would start there. And then, you could also, let me give you an even bigger starting point. Read the 18 enumerated powers of the federal government for all three branches in the Constitution and find where it says the Supreme Court is the final word on what the Constitution means. And you'll still be looking for that because it's not in there anywhere. So you could really start at the Constitution.
Micah Toole asks, why do you continually, I think it means retell, the narrative that Congress is doing nothing? I wholeheartedly agree with the basic premise of the point, and I share in your frustration. However, the fact of the matter is that this Congress is Trump's creation. He has deliberately gone after the only few constitutional conservative members of Congress and has endorsed the exact people who have been hurting us for years and are now hurting him.
This is a somewhat legitimate complaint. I would firstly say to people lobbying it, have you taken a bullet to the face for your country? Carry on. So I think we should start there. Okay? I mean, I kind of think we all watched live a guy take a bullet to the face for the country. And I reset that a lot because you know from talking to me that night.
Yeah.
That had a profound impact on me watching that. And the reason why is because it just said to me, hey, all the spiritual themes that I think have been taking place all this time, confirmed. That is absolutely, that was Zapruder film evidence of what we had maybe suspected. And that was, when Han Solo looks at Rey and says, it's real, all of it. I mean, that's okay. All right. So I think it's real easy to backseat drive. Doesn't mean you can't be critical. You are still the boss and the voter. But I think this idea that is behind the premise of these questions, that somehow, that doesn't mean he couldn't do better, but that somehow Trump has not done enough. Have you taken a bullet to the face for your country? And then got right back into the arena. And then about a month later, you're just playing golf in a private event that isn't even on a public schedule, and there's a dude taking shots at you over there in the bush. You ever faced anything like that before? I just think we should consider that. And yeah, that's frank. I admit that's giving Trump more accommodation than I've ever given a politician before. You know why? Have we seen a politician before face that? You ever seen anything like that before? Neither have I.
No.
I've never seen anything like it. So there's clearly something about this unique guy that they keep wanting to kill him. I just think that we should have that somewhere in the backdrop. Because if you don't, here's what happens if you don't. You're going to end up, he's a double agent, and he's a false flag, and shoot yourself in the face first, and then come back. I feel like Tom Cruise in Tropic Thunder. Here's what I need from you right now. All right. I need you to slow down. All right. Pay attention very closely and shoot yourself in the face. That's kind of what I need right now. I just think when you need to relax and contemplate. They don't shoot double agents and false flags in the face. Fair?
Seems fair.
I think it's a reasonable premise. Now, that all being said, this is a legit complaint to a point. What we don't know is why he does that. We'd have to look at each individual race. Did the more conservative candidate have a real chance to win? How many of them were swing districts that without the benefit of incumbency could have been lost? And so they're doing the math over there at the political office thinking the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. I'd have to go back and look at all those races. I haven't done so. I haven't had time to do so. I don't know what possesses somebody. I don't know what possesses somebody to launch Ron DeSantis into the governor's office on one hand, and then, turn around and endorse Lindsey Graham on the other. I would love to know. I want to be in on those conversations as well. I'm not, though. So I would only be able to take fairly, low educated. I mean, I do this professionally, so I'm somewhat informed. I don't know that it's a very educated guess. And if I had to guess, a lot of it is just based on, I think the first go around, a lot of it was based on who would give him the affirmations that he desired. I think this time, a lot of it is we just don't have a lot of time. Because it doesn't make any sense to come out of the gate with the detailed plan they started with, right? And then execute it the way they did, and make the staff picks the way they did, and then be where we're at. Does that make sense? It doesn't make sense to then turn around and say, but you guys go ahead and just screw me out in the open. It doesn't make any sense. All right? I also think, again, that if you're going to nail Trump for the rhinos he's endorsed, you should give him credit for the people that he has endorsed that we probably in any previous other era could not have gotten people like that elected. So I listen, man, I cringe when I hear talk of primarying Massey and Chip Roy. I know those guys. You guys know Chip Roy's one of my best friends. I cringe at that stuff. But I think I'm going to give the guy who got shot in the face, and then after that, actually, his messaging moved even further right than what it was before. I'm going to give that guy more time. And I'm probably going to turn to the guys in Congress who are shooting us in the face and doing nothing. Rather than go to Trump all the time and say, hey, you need to, hey, Tony Gwynn.
This is a great point.
Tony Gwynn, I know you're hitting 364 and leading the National League in hitting again this year, but man, you were 1 for 3 yesterday and we lost because you left the runner on second stranded in the top of the ninth, so we took an L. I don't know, did you go to the number 3 hitter, the number 4 hitter, the number 5 hitter and ask them, why were they 0 for 5? At some point, we got to go to everybody else and ask them, can you maybe do your job for us for once? At some point, maybe a thought. Okay? Because they're shooting us in the face, is what many of these Republicans are doing. You guys are welcome to comment on that answer if you would like to.
Well, the last point is the most important point. We're here now doing the work that we're doing, and as Steve has reminded you many times, the window is narrow until the midterms. So everybody needs to stand a post. There are no excuses anymore, and that's why Steve's last point is so important. By comparison, relatively speaking, and not just in the last couple months, but going back to Ronald frickin' Reagan, when Aaron wasn't born. Who's the standard bearer?
Here's what I would ask, because maybe I was too hard on Mike at the beginning, and so I apologize. Okay. The governor's thing in Iowa has me a bit on tilt right now, to be honest with you. I'm very concerned about it. Okay. So pray for me and forgive me after that. Here's what I would ask. Before you send me a note asking me, hey, why has Trump endorsed too many rhinos? Do me a favor. Email every single one of those rhinos and ask them to do their damn job. And then copy me on those notes, please, so I can see that you did that. All right? Now that, I don't think that's too much to ask. Let's say you've got 4 or 5 kids in your house that you're raising. You have one kid who's clearly doing more than everybody else is. But he's also not necessarily where he needs to be or where you want him to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Do you keep ragging the kid, though, who's at least making an effort? Or do you look at the other kids and you're like, pull your weight, man. What are we doing here? I mean, how does it work in the Urson house? There's only expectations for the one that's actually trying? There's no expectations for the rest?
That is not how it is.
And that's not how it worked in the Deace house either, folks. I doubt it works that way in your house. It certainly should not work that way in the people's house. So, he could do better. He's also doing way more than everybody else. Both of these things are simultaneously true. I don't know what the solution is. Like I said last hour, he's going to have to pressure them, though. On that, Micah, you and I would probably agree. I don't see another way out. I'm not entirely sure he can pressure them, frankly. See, I think that's. I wonder if he doesn't think he can pressure them, and trying to do so and being unsuccessful would hurt his leverage on everything else he's trying to do with tariffs and Ukraine. He would look weak, so he tries to avoid that. That could very well be the issue, and maybe we don't want to say that quiet part out loud, but that is a theory that I have thought of before. Back here on the Steve Deace Show, powered by our friends over at Jace Medical. Maybe you have seen some of the stuff circulating online about ivermectin, mebendazole. It is the medication, the compound medication that a lot of people are talking about right now. And is it possible it could be one of the biggest breakthroughs in modern medicine? Well, maybe. First of all, ivermectin is already one of the biggest breakthroughs in modern medicine. That's why they gave it a Nobel Prize back in 2015. All right? They just don't hand those out. Okay, so I know a lot of you think, or were told it was horse paste, but it was actually saving hundreds of thousands of lives as recently as just 4 or 5 years before the pandemic. Then you have mebendazole, which is a treatment for worms. There is some hope that maybe compounding those meds together can help detoxify the body, particularly if you're doing things like fighting cancer. If this is something you want to explore on your own based on what you have found, based on your own research, just speaking for me personally, if it was me, and if and when the time comes, I get to see where does a diagnosis. I'd want to throw everything at it, right? So you can get a 90-day supply of compounded ivermectin and mebendazole at Jace. Your fastest and most important, most affordable option on the market if you want to try this. All right, you'll get it also for 35% less than where you'll get it elsewhere. Get your own 90-day supply today at jace.com, J-A-S-E, and then use the code DACE at checkout for the discount. Jace.com, code DACE at checkout for the discount. At jace.com, code DACE at checkout for the discount.
Moving on, we will go to William Caldara, who asks 2 Timothy 2:24 through 26. How do we consider this in light of mocking the enemy? This is from one who has a hard time obeying the scripture but finds mocking comes more
So, always good if we're going to cite a verse to have it ready. So let me go grab it so I can read it exactly. What is it? 24 through 26.
It has to do with engaging with false teachers and.
Okay. No, that's the wimpy NIV version. Let's not use that. How about, where's my...
Servant of the Lord should not be quarrelsome, but should be kind, teachable, and patient.
So who's the writer of those words? Paul. Paul is the one who wrote Titus. Elsewhere, Paul tells the Judaizers in Galatia to cut off the rest of their penises if they are so obsessed with circumcision, refers to a sorcerer as a son of the devil in full view of the public. So how do you reconcile those two things? Well, what is the context and motivation behind all of them? Right? Read that again, the verse in context again, Aaron, for me.
Let's see. And the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring evil, correcting his opponents with gentleness. God may perhaps grant them repentance, leading to a knowledge of the truth, and they may come to their senses and escape from the snare of the devil after being captured by him to do his will.
So there clearly becomes a moment, like Paul writes in Romans, when it's at all possible, live in peace with everyone. When it's at all possible, when it's at all possible, when it's at all possible, which means if we need that sort of clarifier, that means what?
Sometimes it's not
Sometimes
possible.
It is not possible. All right. So when we had this conversation, was it like a week ago about, and I read just from Ezekiel a part that most churches would never preach today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we pointed out this kind of language is in the Bible several times. But the Bible's a very big book. So while it's in the Bible several times, several examples of this, by and large, though, the weight of the way the scriptures communicate the weight of it does not bend to that form of communication, correct?
Mm-hmm.
There are exceptions because of the rules. There are things that are so heinous. There are moments that are so obvious. There is evil that is so ever present that it just... There's false teaching that has so metastasized that it's going to require a little bit more than this. So, I mean, I would just look at the context of the man who wrote all of those words. He'll tell you what it looks like. He also said, hey, follow me as I follow Christ. All right. So the Lord chose him to write most of the New Testament. So I kind of think that's a good example to follow. By and large, Paul's style of communication does seem to exemplify what is in 2 Timothy here, verses 24 and 26. I said Titus earlier. I think that's why you guys looked at me confused. He wrote that too, but we were actually talking about 2 Timothy. By and large, if we took the full bulk of what Paul writes in the New Testament, would most of what he writes line up in terms of what we understand in terms of tone and temperament with what is said here in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 24 and 26. More or less. The way that you've communicated with your daughters, probably, more or less over the course of the long of their lives, probably is in line with this. Same thing. Most of the way I've communicated with my two daughters and my son would mostly line up with this to the best of my ability. Are there moments, however, that it required a different form of communication given what was at stake at that moment?
Yes.
And therefore, when things are at stake in those particular moments, does Paul not also then therefore communicate, shall we say, with a more colorful urgency?
Yes.
Yes. So that's how I would answer. I mean, if mocking is like your typical disposition, then I would, go to the Lord in prayer over that. All right. But given what we're seeing happen in our culture today, there are some things that definitively need to be mocked.
Agreed.
Whom are we mocking? The devil.
Mm-hmm.
That's the real enemy.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my answer.
That's another good answer.
Liam Patterson says, would y'all ever do a change my mind, prove me wrong style tabling event on a Christian college campus presenting challenging theological questions?
I love this idea. I'd love to do it. So if any of our sales staff or anybody who's listening wants to put us on the road to do that, to me, that's how we would have to do it. I mean, Steven Crowder kind of, He's kind of the origin of this, the whole change my mind thing.
Right.
And then Charlie has just taken it to a whole new level, just setting up a table, okay, and, come at me is essentially what he is doing with people of all various persuasions on college campuses. So that ground between Stephen and Charlie has already been, is it tread or trod? Do we know?
Treading?
No.
Treaded. It's not shredded.
Trodden.
Okay. It's already been done. Let's just go with that. All right. Steve and Charlie have already done that. Okay. And I've seen Michael Knowles over at Daily Wire also do things where he's like in a rotunda, right?
Yeah.
And there's like a clock, and like he's surrounded in a rotunda by people that have 2 or 3 minutes to come up to him and do whatever they say. So, those guys have kind of already done some of this. So the rest, this would kind of be derivative of what they've already done and done well. So if we were going to do this, what would make it unique about how we would do it? Probably, is it Liam that suggested this?
Yes.
All right. So what Liam is suggesting would be the unique thing that has probably not been done yet. All right. Let's just go right to a Christian college campus, and I'd be fine doing it Catholic or Protestant, frankly, and just lining it up and come now, let us reason together. I think that would be a hoot and a blast. My fear is I would be disappointed. Okay. At the lack of cogent disagreement, that it would not be as vigorous as I was hoping. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That it would not be as challenging, but that people would look at me like, well, I mean, I read here in Purpose Driven Life, that is my fear. Actually, now I think about this, sales staff. No.
It would be more likely you'd get kicked off of a Christian college campus than a secular university
I
campus.
think that's exactly correct.
My alma mater, I don't even know this individual. Star Parker, does that name ring a bell?
Yeah.
My alma mater, actually, she had a speaking engagement lined up. And this has been years ago. There's a different administration now, so I'm not casting any stones at the current administration. She had a speaking engagement at my alma mater. Okay, small private Christian university, and the administration came in and nixed it. She's speaking on behalf of Young America's Foundation.
That is my fear, is that if we did go to Christian campuses, it'd be like, rapture me, Lord, we're done here.
Like the antibodies would just eject you.
Great conceptually, but I worry about implementing it, Liam. All right, thank you. Yes.
Jason is next. What do you think about Trump posting a social media picture of himself dressed like the next pope? I'm Protestant and voted for Trump, and I still support many of his policies, but that picture was in poor taste, and Trump needs to tone down his self-promotion.
I think if you are concerned about Trump and self-promotion, I think you might want to let that one go. And can you guys guess why at no point did I turn to Todd during the middle of this broadcast and say, so as the token Catholic, Todd, your thoughts on that? Do you know why that never happened? Because we're not a bunch of friggin' pansies. That's why. And if I had done that, Todd would have taken that air gun and shot me in the face. And then after getting up, I would have said, thank you. I needed that. Thank you. Okay. Now, yes, the amount of people who had no problem whatsoever with Gretchen Whitmer mocking sacraments of the church with Doritos, now suddenly concerned about a Trump meme. You can go straight to hell with all of that as far as I'm concerned. If you're a Protestant, your concern should be Trump posting himself as in a papal position at all. Now if you'd written that to me, I'd have said, amen, brother. All right. but out of being offended, come on, man. My goodness. We need to do like a holographic reenactment of like Luther Erasmus debates, okay? Like the literal things that were said during these conversations. And just like have AI digitally recreate that right out of the texts of what went on. I mean, this is the big one, Martha. I mean, we are freaking soft. Holy crap. Holy crap. Luther literally called down curses on Erasmus. Okay? Come on, man. Come on.
Would you be offended if Trump posted an AI-generated photo depicting himself dressed in James Dobson vestments, which is just a vest, I think?
First of all, I'd have to ask, what are those?
A vest.
Okay, just a vest. Just a vest with a sport coat?
Yep.
No, I would not. No.
Next is Christopher. Have you heard about the European Congress on Evangelism happening this month in Berlin? The Billy Graham Association is hosting more than 1,000 Christian leaders from all Europe to equip and strengthen them in sharing the gospel. Isn't this the kind of thing the church should be doing?
100%. Yes. 100%. Yes. But let's make sure it's the gospel. Okay? The
Maybe
gospel.
that's why they have to have a meeting to make sure they know what the gospel is.
All right.
Is this
conversion is a step of the gospel. The fullness of the gospel is the discipling of the nations, okay? To become more like Christ, the sanctification process, okay? I mean, there is more to it than some sinners felt guilty once about all the bad stuff they've done and asked Jesus into their hearts. That is a vital first step, okay? But it is just a step, okay? It is just a step. Lord, teach us to pray. Jesus looked at them and said, go out there, memorize the sinner's prayer, come up with some really good music and tropes and get people feeling really, really down and sad about their sins. And then afterwards say, hey, repeat after me and have them ask me. Is that what he said? Is that what he said?
It is not.
It is not what he said. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Said that. That's what he said. So, all for it, as long as we're teaching the fullness of the gospel here.
All right, next we will go to Paul. When Christ spoke to the apostles and said, whose sins you forgive are forgiven, whose sins you hold bound are held bound, did that authority die with the apostles? Did they not have the authority to give that authority to someone else? Isn't that a waste if it just died with them? What would be the purpose in Christ saying that to them, only to have it die with them?
I think these are very good questions. I'm not a cessationist, so I've asked questions like this. I think they lead to unsatisfactory answers. That's why I'm not a cessationist. I think those are very good questions. I mean, and even as a Protestant, you believe ultimately that the Word of God is the authority, and I do. Well, we're still building and establishing churches, right? We still believe in pastoral leadership. We still believe in male headship in the home. Okay, so where does that authority come from? All right, so I think these are very good questions. I do. I think I'm not a cessationist, but I think many of the complaints cessationists have about charismatics are accurate. If all my Reformed friends do is take the trash out every day, that's what Reformed Twitter basically is. It's trash day every day on Reformed Twitter. You're putting the can out on the curb every day. Every day. It's amazing. I mean, there's trash to put on the curb every day on Reformed Twitter, man. Every day I see it. Every day. Every day's trash day. Well, for the charismatics, it's never trash day. They're just hoarders. It just a cruise and a cruise and a cruise and a cruise. It just grows and grows and grows. You know, Benny Hinn's got a pile over here and Creflo Dollar's got a pile over there. No one ever takes out the trash. You know, so while I'm not a cessationist, I think many of their arguments against charismatics have virtue, or at least are valid because of the ecclesiastical practices of charismatics. I would fashion myself more of a continuist, is what I would say. Somebody in the Reformed camp is taking your trash out. Correct. Today. I'm getting taken out right now. But yes, I'm in someone's Reformed trash can. I'm out on the curb right now. I told you guys the whole time. All right. So you got me. Yes. Next, we go to Jim Heron. Did the internet and information revolution make it impossible for people's political energy to be focused on their local communities? Oh, I think it goes way beyond that. I think actually the internet is making it easier. I think we're having more conversations about this now than we have in many, many years. I mean, I remember when our old friend Shannon Joy 10 years ago was trying to get me to do more local stuff, and I was just like, the audience isn't there yet for me to do that. I think they are there now. Okay, Moms for Liberty and stuff like that. Okay, so I think television is what nationalized everything. I think television did. I think everything became nationalized with television. I think our interconnectedness via the internet has actually made that easier. You know, with Facebook groups and things of that nature. So I think the opposite is true.
All right, finally a late-breaking question here. So our patriarch here at the Blaze, he's been in Europe, as I understand. Here's his post. Thanks, American Airlines. While I can see
got him too?
While I can see my plane boarding because they were late, they bumped us. Even though we made it in time with 50 minutes to spare.
Oh, my gosh.
Why? British Airways doesn't do that. Thank you, British Airways, for being helpful. Respect. Biggie J says, question for American Airlines and us. It's just a coincidence that Glenn Beck and this show got screwed by American Airlines within a week. I look back at the schedule. They fly that DC to Des Moines flight every day except for Saturday. In the last 3 weeks, guess which flight is the only one to have any sort of delays or cancellations?
See, I was going to say it's not a coincidence. They're just that systemically bad. But now that you told me that, I'm starting to think maybe, I don't know. I'm starting to feel targeted. I think I've been victimized.
But then the legend of the airport show would not exist.
That's true. And the reaction we have gotten to that continues to be very positive. So they can't take that away from us.
No, they cannot.
They cannot. Hey, we want to talk why we had different elections here last year than Canada and Australia this year. We'll do that in the overtime for Blaze TV subscribers. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, Romans 8:28.